July 9th, 1941. 10,000 feet above Lake Ladoga, eastern Finland. The Brewster's cockpit is a cramped metal cave, humming and rattling around Warrant Officer Eino Ilmari, Illu Juutilainen. Oil fumes sting his nose. The airframe thrums as the right cyclone radial in front of him growls at full power. Frost feathers the edges of the canopy where his breath hits the plexiglass and instantly freezes. Outside, the world is a hard, cold blue. The mirror of Lake Ladoga lies below, streaked with whitecaps and the faint scars of artillery fire along the far shore. Ahead, a quilt of low cloud hangs over the Soviet lines, all gray and dirty white, hiding guns, soldiers, and fighters. Kolme Nelje. This is Yoto. Enemy at 2 o'clock. Low. Prepare to dive. The radio crackles in his headset, Captain Karhunen's voice thin with static. Illu shifts in his harness, his gloved hand tightening on the stick. He glances left and right. 2 other Brewsters slide into view, stubby wings and big radial engines, making them look more like dumpy flying barrels than sleek fighters. Their olive-drab paint is scarred and chipped, streaked with oil and exhaust. White-blue roundels of the Finnish Air Force flash on their wings. Somewhere in London and Pearl Harbor, men have already started calling this machine a flying coffin. Too heavy, too slow, bad climb, bad roll. A death trap for pilots unlucky enough to draw it. He can almost hear the American technician who'd handed over the first Brewsters at Turku months earlier, trying to make a joke of it. "Sorry about the crates, Lieutenant. Navy boys say she flies like a drunk cow in a hurricane. But hey, she lands easy." Illu had just smiled, running his hand along the smooth curve of the cowling. He didn't care what they called it. Out here, over these forests and lakes, it was all he had, and it would be enough. He snaps back to the present as a distant glint catches his eye, sunlight flashing off silver wings, small shapes, specks at first, skimming low over the dark water. His heart kicks. There they are. Polikarpov, the first 153 Chaikas, biplane fighters with gull wings, escorting bombers deeper inland. To a desk officer in Berlin, they'd look obsolete, like toys from the last war. But Illu knows better. In the hands of a determined Soviet pilot, those nimble little fighters can carve up a clumsy opponent in seconds. The problem, he thinks, is that today they haven't met a clumsy opponent. He eases the Buffalo's nose down. The engine's growl climbs toward a roar. The airframe begins to shake as the speed builds. Wind lashes at the canopy. Lake Ladoga swells in the windscreen, the thin line of the shoreline rushing up. "Joto, this is Kolme Nelje. I see 6, maybe 8 fighters, low over the lake. No bombers yet," he calls, eyes locked on the distant shapes. "Understood, Kolme Nelje. Follow my lead. We attack out of the sun. No heroics, boys." Karhunen replies, "No, heroics." Illu smiles faintly. He has been flying combat long enough to know that every fight looks like no heroics before the first tracers fly. He checks his instruments, fuel good, oil pressure steady, guns armed. 4. 50 caliber Brownings in the wings. 2. 30 seconds in the nose. Not elegant, not cutting edge, but brutally simple. Point, shoot, and whatever is in front of you stops being a problem. The Brewster's thick wings bite into the air as he rolls a little, lining up his dive behind Karhunen's lead aircraft. The sun is above and behind them, a harsh white eye. It will blind the Soviets until it's too late. Distance closing. "Stay tight," Karhunen's voice murmurs. Below, one of the Chaikas suddenly banks left, then right, restless, searching. Maybe their radio operator has warned them. Maybe the pilot just has a bad feeling. You're in the back of Illu's cockpit now, watching over his shoulder. The leather of his jacket creaks as he leans forward. His gloved thumb rests on the gun button, feeling its familiar edge. You can hear his breathing over the engine. Steady and slow. He's not thinking about politics or grand strategy or the fate of nations. He's thinking about angles, speed, and gravity. About where to be 3 seconds from now. He flicks his eyes up to the reflector sight. There, the thin, glowing ring hovering in the glass. Beyond it, the shape of a Chaika swells. You can see the red stars on its wings now. Now, he whispers. Even before Karhunen says it, the lead Brewster spits flame. Tracers slash past Illu's canopy, glowing orange streaks stabbing toward the nearest Chaika. The Soviet pilot panics, yanks his biplane into a hard climbing turn. Bad choice. Biplanes bleed speed fast when they pull up. For a moment, a slow, hanging target against the sky. Illu nudges the stick, sliding his Buffalo a hair to the right, setting up his own shot. His heart isn't pounding. He's too deep into the familiar tunnel now, where the world narrows to crosshairs, target, and the feeling in his stomach that tells him when the geometry is right. The Chaika's fuselage slides through his sight ring, a perfect crossing angle. He squeezes the trigger. The Buffalo shudders as all 6 guns hammer at once. The smell of cordite floods the cockpit. Brass casings rattle against the wing roots, tumbling into the slipstream. Tracers walk into the Soviet fighter's engine cowling. You see tiny puffs of smoke, then a sudden belch of black as the bullets bite deep. The Chaika jerks, its nose dropping. Flames lick back along the fuselage, bright against the pale morning sky. The canopy bursts open. You catch a glimpse of a figure scrambling, then tumbling free, a dark speck against the blue. Illu doesn't watch the parachute open. He's already rolling, scanning for the next threat. Yixi down, he reports tersely into the radio. 1 down. No hits? Kolme? Nelje? Karhunen's question crackles. Not a scratch. Illu replies, his eyes flicking over the wings, the engine gauges. So far, the flying Coffin is flying just fine, but the sky is no longer theirs alone. 2 more Chaikas claw their way up toward them from below, turning into the attack. Another pair loops in from the side, trying to climb onto the Buffalo's tails. Tracers streak past Illu's canopy. A sudden swarm of angry fireflies. He feels the Buffalo tremble as a near miss slaps the air beside him. A chunk of fabric spins away from a wingtip. Just paint, maybe a sliver of metal. Nothing vital. Not yet. Break right! Break right! Illu doesn't panic. He throws the Brewster over, wing rolling toward the lake, nose dropping into a controlled fall. The G-forces press him into his seat. His vision narrows for a heartbeat, then clears. Wind howls around the crest. Canopy. Lake Ladoga rushes up again, spinning crazily in the windscreen as he yanks the stick, turning the dive into a tight, grinning arc. He feels the Buffalo answer him. Slow to roll. Yes, but solid, trustworthy. Like a heavyweight boxer leaning into a punch. The Chaika that was on his tail overshoots, flashing past above and to the left. Its pilot too fast, too eager. Illu bares his teeth. They call his plane a flying coffin. They say it's too slow, too clumsy, to live against modern fighters. Fine, he thinks, watching the Chaika's silhouette slide back into his gun sight as he reverses the turn. Let them keep believing that. Up here, where it matters, the only reputation that counts is the one you make with your trigger finger. He steadies the Buffalo, lining up the shot that will decide whether the flying Coffin lives or dies today. The Chaika flashes across Illu's nose, banking hard, its gull wings flexing under the strain. For a heartbeat, the Soviet pilot seems to realize the danger. He rolls out of his turn, trying to dive back toward the lake, hoping speed will save him. It won't. Illu kicks the rudder, dragging the Brewster's nose across the sky in a wide, heavy arc. The Buffalo isn't a ballerina. It can't snap roll or flick turn like the nimble Soviet biplanes, but it can carry momentum like a falling anvil. And right now, that's all he needs. The reticle drifts across the Chaika's tail. Illu breathes out slowly, letting his heartbeat flatten into something cold and even. His right thumb rests on the gun button. A sudden burst of tracers rips past his cockpit from the right. The canopy flashes orange, then white. Noise slams into him like a fist, sharp metallic pings of rounds hitting the fuselage, tearing through air, snapping past his head. One of the rounds punches a star-shaped crack into the right side of the windscreen. Not fatal. Not yet, but close. Too close. He drags the stick left, pulling the Brewster into a jarring barrel roll, the whole fuselage groaning as centrifugal force crushes him into the seat. His vision tightens again, the edges darkening. Behind him, a second Chaika clings to his tail, weaving through his evasive maneuvers with unsettling precision. "Yixi, this is Kolmanelia. I've picked up a tail." Static fills his headset. Then, Karhunen's voice cuts through. "Hold him? Kolmanelia. I'm coming down your right." Illu levels out just above the tree line, pines whipping past in a green blur beneath him. The Buffalo vibrates so hard the canopy buzzes against its mounting points. The pursuing Chaika stays glued behind, spitting thin lines of tracers that stitch through the air around Illu's wings. He can feel the Soviet pilot closing in for the kill. The Buffalo wasn't built for this, not for low-altitude dogfighting against hyper-agile biplanes. Its heavy controls, its lazy roll rate, its weight. Commanders in the West had cursed these very traits, blaming them for dead pilots and lost squadrons. And yet, there's another side to that weight. Another advantage buried inside all that metal and mass. Illu spots a moment in the chaos. A tiny gap, a glimmer of potential. Ahead, a narrow valley between two ridges opens like a jaws. Flying through it is a gamble. Flying around it is suicide. He dives straight in. Trees whip past only meters below, shadows flickering across his canopy like the beating wings of ravens. The Chaika follows, closer now, committing to the trap, even as its pilot must be. Realizing something's wrong, Illu pulls back gently, letting the Buffalo sink low, almost too low. Then he kills the throttle. Not fully. Just enough. The Buffalo bleeds speed hard and fast, far faster than a lightweight biplane expects. For a split second, the Chaika behind him surges forward. Unable to slow quickly enough, it flashes past him in a blur of red stars and sun-bleached canvas. Illu slams the throttle back to full. The Buffalo roars like an enraged beast, the cockpit vibrating violently. He hauls the stick left, right, then up, clawing back into the Chaika's blind arc. The Soviet pilot realizes too late. Illu is already on his tail. Kolmanelia, clear. Karhunen. Radios, distant, late, but the fight is already ending. Illu's sight ring slides over the Chaika's fuselage. He sees the pilot's head turn, one last glance over the shoulder. A moment washed in sun, fear, and pale smoke. Illu's thumb finds the gun button. He squeezes. The Browning's thunder. 6, streams of fire ripping through the narrow valley. Tracers stitch across the Chaika's tail, its wings, then its cockpit. Fabric erupts into tatters. Smoke sprays backward in a gray-white sheet. A final burst punches through the engine. The biplane erupts into a spray of metal and canvas, the broken husk, tumbling into the trees below. Illu banks sharply to avoid the impact plume. Branches crackle and snap as the burning fragments of the Chaika vanish into the forest. He breathes once, deeply, letting the cold air of the cockpit steady his nerves. That's two. Ahead, the sky is still, alive with twisting fighters, buffaloes and Chaikas, weaving, diving, climbing. But something has shifted. Illu can feel it in the air. The Soviets are losing momentum. The buffalo, mocked, dismissed, called a death trap by half the world, is carving up the enemy with ruthless efficiency. Illu raises his nose back toward the sun, scanning for his next target. This fight is far from over. The sun glares across the shattered sky above Lake Ladoga as Illu Juutilainen levels out, scanning for the next threat. The fight is still twisting through the air like a swarm of angry hornets, buffaloes, and Chaikas, locked in spirals of smoke and fire. A shout bursts over the radio. Kolme, Kolme. I've taken hits, oil pressure dropping. That's Sergeant Puhakka. Illu snaps his head left. Far off, a lone Brewster trails a thin ribbon of white vapor, wobbling as it tries to climb, away from two Chaikas clawing up behind it. Hold on, Puhakka. I see them, Illu says, already kicking the rudder, rolling the buffalo onto its side. The G-force drags him down into the seat like a stone. Trees blur beneath him as he drops altitude fast, slicing through pockets of cold air that rattle the canopy. His target, the lead Chaika chasing Puhakka. Its pilot is good, very good, closing the distance with patient precision, letting the Brewster bleed itself dry before going in for the kill. Illu narrows the gap. The Chaika grows larger in his windscreen, silver-gray wings, shimmering against the blue sky. He lines up the shot, but then, movement. A flicker, above. Another Chaika diving at him. The Soviet pilot has spotted him and is already pouncing, wings flexing, guns blinking with faint flashes. Illu jerks the stick, pulling a brutal snap turn. Tracers rip through the air, where he'd been a heartbeat earlier. The diving Chaika streaks past, missing by inches. He feels the buffalo strain, its heavy frame groaning as he throws it into a tight climbing spiral. The Brewster is not supposed to do this. Every manual, every foreign pilot, every expert insists it can't. But Illu knows his aircraft like a living creature. He knows its weight, its quirks, the way the cyclone engine hesitates before finding its second wind. And right now, the Buffalo is responding like it was built for him and him alone. The climbing spiral wraps around the Prasa's diving Chaika like a tightening noose. The Soviet pilot tries to roll out, to escape upward, too slow. Illu cuts inside his turn, the heavy Brewster, forcing gravity to bend to its will. The moment opens like a door swinging wide, the Chaika's underside exposed, helpless in the spiral. Illu squeezes the trigger. The guns bark fire. Metal flakes off the Chaika's wings. The engine bursts into oily smoke. The biplane flips over and drops, spiraling down in a wide, black-smudged fall. 3. Illu barely checks the wreckage before diving again. Puhakka still needs him. He finds them, low over the treetops. Puhakka's Brewster limps on one wing, barely keeping altitude. The trailing Chaika closes in, guns ready, patient, and cruel. Illu throttles up, the engine howling as he charges into the fight like a charging bull. The Chaika senses him, starts a shallow climb, trying to pull away. Not this time. Illu closes the gap with surgical intent. He can see the stitching on the Soviet pilot's helmet now. The enemy glances back once, just once, and the fear is clear. Illu fires a precise, disciplined burst. The Chaika's left wing disintegrates. The biplane cartwheels sideways and vanishes into the pines below with a muffled, distant crash. Kios, Kolmenelye. Puhaka gasps over the radio. Illu exhales through gritted teeth. The air stinks of oil and gunpowder. The Buffalo's engine trembles beneath him like an exhausted horse, but it still flies. He circles once, twice, scanning the sky. The last few Chaikas are fleeing toward the Soviet lines, trailing smoke or weaving in desperate, zigzag retreats. The Finns hold the sky now. Johto to all aircraft. Regroup! The field is ours. Illu banks gently toward home, the sun warming the cracked canopy. Below him, Lake Ladoga shimmers as if nothing violent has happened at all. But he knows better. Inside him, the familiar quiet returns, the calm after a fight he didn't start but intends to finish. They mock the Brewster in distant offices, in briefing rooms thousands of miles away. They call it obsolete, overweight, underpowered, a flying coffin. Yet here, over these ancient forests and frozen lakes, the ugly barrel has become something else entirely. A weapon in the hands of men who refuse to die. A zero killer in the Pacific. A Soviet killer in Finland. A machine that, in the right hands, rewrites its own reputation with fire and steel. Illu touches the cockpit frame, almost gently. Good girl, he mutters. 4 victories today. 94 more would follow. None would touch him. Not once. The flight home is quiet, eerily so. Illu Juutilainen guides the Brewster Buffalo over the endless quilt of forest and water, the engine humming in a low, steady growl. The rush of adrenaline has faded. What remains is the sharp clarity of a man who has lived a dozen lifetimes in the past 20 minutes. But the war doesn't pause, not even for breath. As the Brewsters approach their forward base at Rantasalmi, the radio crackles with a frantic burst of chatter. Enemy bombers spotted, heading north from the Ladoga line. Multiple contacts. Altitude 3,000. Illu stiffens. They aren't done. Not today. Puhaka's damaged Brewster turns, sluggishly toward the landing strip. But Karhunen's voice cuts in. All serviceable aircraft. Intercept immediately. We cannot let them reach the supply convoy. Illu banks sharply, abandoning the comforts of home for battle once more. His Brewster rolls on command, obedient despite the scars, etched into its skin. Below, a convoy crawls along a narrow road between 2 lakes. A thin line of trucks carrying ammunition, fuel, and bandages to the front. If the Soviet bombers hit them, the line could collapse. Illu pushes the throttle. The Brewster surges forward. The sky ahead flickers, with black dots. 5, maybe 6, SB-2 bombers lumbering northward, their engines thundering. Behind them trail a pair of I-16 Ishaks, faster and more dangerous than the biplane Chaikas. Illu grins. Finally, he mutters. He climbs into the sun, letting the Buffalo disappear into the glare. The SB-2 formation grows larger in the windscreen, twin-engined shapes with glazed noses and dark shadows beneath their wings. A perfect flank. Kolmenelya. Attack from above and right. Karhunen orders. But Illu is already diving. The Brewster trembles as it picks up speed, screaming along the fuselage. Illu lines up the bomber on the far left. its tail gun already spitting desperate, scattered fire. He sweeps past the cone of tracers and fires a blistering burst into the bomber's port engine. Bullets punch holes through metal and flesh. The engine erupts in a burst of flame. The wing dips. The SB-2 rolls onto its side, spinning toward the treetops. Illu doesn't watch it fall. He's already banking into the second bomber. This one's gunners are alert. Tracers rake across the Brewster, clattering like hailstones. A round smacks into the cowling with a sharp metallic clang, and smoke wisps into the cockpit. Illu coughs, wipes soot from his goggles, and dives closer, too close, dangerously close. But that's where the Brewster shines. The bomber fills his sight. He doesn't aim for the engines this time. 6 guns roar. Glass explodes outward in a glittering shower. The SB-2's nose slumps down like a wounded animal. 2 bombers burning. The remaining 3 scatter, their formation broken. The Ishak fighters pounce on Karhunen's wingmen below, spiraling into a furious knife fight. Illu picks one Ishak and drops onto it. The Soviet fighter is fast, faster than the Buffalo in a straight line. It rolls left, snaps right, pulling every trick in the book to shake him. Illu stays glued to its tail. The Brewster's secret weapon isn't speed, or climb rate, or glamour. It's stability, predictability, the ability to point its guns exactly where Illu wants them, no matter what the rest of the plane is doing. He fires a short burst. Tracers zip past the Ishak's canopy. The Soviet pilot panics and rolls into a diving corkscrew. Exactly what Illu was waiting for. He follows the spiral down, adjusting with tiny taps of rudder and a steady pull of the stick. Speed building, distance shrinking, the world narrowing to a single point of focus. The moment appears. Illu fires. The Ishak disintegrates into a fireball, spiraling into the forest floor with a booming crack. 3 bombers destroyed, 1 fighter down, and the convoy safe. Illu circles once, twice, watching the curling plumes of smoke rise from the trees. The Brewster's canopy feels warm now, heated by sunlight and the glow of victory. This flying coffin, this overweight, unloved barrel of steel, has just saved hundreds of Finnish soldiers, and it has done so without failing once. Illu banks toward home at last, the smell of cordite fading, the engine humming steady and true. Behind him, the sky still bears the scars of the morning, smoke trails, drifting ash, and the fading echoes of battle. Ahead lies the airfield. The ground crews already running out with signal flags. Waving him in, he lowers the Brewster gently toward the runway. Another mission survived, another legend born, not of the aircraft, not even of the war, but of the man inside the cockpit. The wheels of Illu Juutilainen's Brewster Buffalo kiss the runway with a soft bump, far softer than a machine this heavy has any right to manage. Dust kicks up in a pale cloud as the aircraft rolls to a stop, its engine coughing once before settling into a deep, contented rumble. Illu slides open the canopy. Cold air rushes in, carrying the sharp scent of pine sap and distant gun smoke. The ground crew sprints toward him, mechanics in oil-stained overalls, medics with white armbands, officers with binoculars still dangling from their necks. Their boots kick gravel across the packed dirt. One mechanic stares at the bullet holes stitched across the Brewster's wings, his eyes widening. Perkele. How did this thing stay in the air? Illu swings a leg over the side of the cockpit and drops lightly to the ground. It wanted to, he answers simply, patting the fuselage. Puhaka taxis in moments later, smoke trailing from his battered engine. His landing is rough, bouncing twice before settling. But he's alive. and that is enough. Karhunen's Brewster lands next, followed by the rest of the returning flight, some limping, some smoking, all showing scars. But they are coming home, and that is the difference between pilots who fear their aircraft and pilots who master it. Inside the command shack, a low wooden hut, patched, with tar paper and smelling of damp wool, Illu stands before a map cluttered with colored pins. Officers crowd around, listening to the combat reports. 4 Chaikas, 1 Ishak, and 3 SB-2 seconds. The adjutant mutters, scribbling furiously. He glances up at Illu. All confirmed? Karhunen nods. I saw most of the kills with my own eyes. The adjutant hesitates, almost disbelieving. That brings your total to... Don't say it! Illu cuts in quietly. He takes no pleasure in numbers, only in survival. His own, and that. Karhunen smiles faintly. It also brings the cress. Soviets one day closer to giving up this madness. Illu doubts. That, but he says nothing. Hours later, as dusk stains the horizon a bruised purple, Illu walks alone along the edge of the airfield. The wind rustles the grass. Somewhere in the woods, a crow caws, harsh and lonely. His Brewster sits on the far end of the runway, its rounded fuselage glowing amber in the fading light. The mechanics have already begun patching the holes, removing scorched panels, wiping soot from the cowling. Illu rests a hand on the cool metal. This plane, this stubby, overweight, out-of-fashion fighter, has carried him through another day of chaos. Not because it is better than the Soviet machines, not because it is faster, or stronger, or more advanced, but because Illu has learned every vibration, every hesitation of the cyclone engine, every quirk of the flight controls, every inch of the wings that seem too thick, too broad, too slow. To other pilots, the Brewster Buffalo is a problem. To Illu, it is a language, one he speaks fluently. He knows exactly how far to push it, and when to let it fly itself. He knows how to make its supposed weaknesses into traps, and its hidden strengths into weapons. And he knows that no aircraft, no matter how flawed, is ever a flying coffin, in the hands of a man who refuses to die. The next morning, frost glitters on the wings. Dawn paints the world with pale fire. The pilots gather again, shivering in their leather jackets as they sip bitter coffee from tin mugs. A scout plane drones overhead. A courier on skis delivers new intelligence reports. The war machine is waking up once more. Illu tightens the strap of his flight goggles. Another mission looms. Another set of Soviet bombers or fighters will cross the border, and he will meet them, not as a hero, not as an ace, but as a man doing his job. The Brewster Buffalo waits on the runway, engine ticking softly as if eager to run again. Illu climbs onto the wing, slides into the cockpit, and pulls the canopy down with a solid thunk. The world becomes a bubble of metal, glass, and engine heat. The ground crew signals readiness. Illu throttles up. The Brewster lurches forward, gathering speed. As the wheels leave the earth, he mutters the same quiet words he always does. Words lost beneath the roar of the engine. Let's show them what a coffin can do. Far ahead, sunlight glints off distant wings. More Soviets. More danger. More chances for the legend to grow. Illu Juutilainen banks toward the rising sun. A hunter in an unfavored machine. A man no enemy ever managed to kill, and the pilot who turned the Brewster Buffalo into an aircraft feared across the frozen front.